Okay, can everyone see that?
Perfect.
All right, excellent. I'll go ahead then. Okay, thank you for joining us. My name's Charlie Griffiths. I'm a co-organiser of the Sarcophagidae Recording Scheme, which I'll refer to as the SRS for sort of time reasons. And I work alongside Daniel Whitmore, who's the scheme lead, and Nigel Jones, who's also a co-organiser for the scheme. So just briefly, myself and Dan will be giving a summary of the activities that the SRS has undertaken since beginning in February of this year. And basically, I'll be handling the first half and just giving a basic overview of the family and our activities, and Daniel will give a more detailed overview in the second half. So really the sort of point of the Sarcophagidae Recording Scheme, the SRS, is to recruit recorders in order to gather sarcophagid records and increase interest in the family, which has historically been maybe underrepresented in recording efforts. So for those who aren't really familiar with the family, I'll just give a brief overview of Sarcophagidae. So the common name for sarcophagids is flesh flies, which this common name sort of conjures up this Hollywood-esque image of these sort of flesh-eating creatures. But really the reverse is true. They're really a range of important ecosystem provisioning organisms. Indeed, they're known as important decomposers, pollinators, and biological control agents, potentially in agriculture. And they also possess a number of unique behaviours. So many species are kleptoparasites and of solitary wasps and bees, and other species are important predators and parasitoids of organisms such as grasshoppers. The males of the family usually exhibit these sort of summiting behaviours. Well, they'll try or they'll sort of migrate to the highest feature in their local environment. And also many are ovoviviparous, meaning that they'll sort of lay live young on decaying material. Well, hence their common name. But I really think they get a bad rep because of their common name, maybe, and they're a really important and interesting group of organisms. But what distinguishes sarcophages from other families, such as Calophoridae? Well, they're well known for their free black and grey longitudinal stripes on their abdomen, on their thorax, sorry, and the checkered tessellated pattern on their abdomen. Their eyes are quite large and red, and the medial vein 1+2 is always present in the wing venation. So I'll just quickly, just very briefly discuss their sort of diversity. So the family is broken down into 3 subfamilies, and they're very closely related to tachinids, to calophorids, and to rhinophorids. And there's approximately 3,100 species worldwide, so this number is rapidly growing. So how many sarcophagid species are there in the UK? In the UK in total, there are about 65 species. Breaking that number down, it was 62, but recently a new species, Sarcophagidae bulgarica, has been added, and there are 2 other species that Daniel is hoping to add to that UK list. Those 65 species represent 20% of the total European sarcophagid species. And as a little factoid, the UK species, I think, approximately represent 2% of species worldwide, though I think I'll have to check my maths on that. So just quickly over trapping and collecting, there are a variety of methods that you can employ to collect and trap sarcophagids, those being pan traps, malaise traps, bait traps, and of course sweep netting. I provided a variety of links on the this presentation slide, which should be available after the AGM for people to access, hopefully, and so you can follow these links. However, there are a variety of like homemade options online that you can search for, so I definitely try it as a sort of cost-effective strategy for collecting sarcophagids. Personally, I use pan traps as a sort of like a omnipresent sort of method of catching sarcophagids in the environment. I do use bait traps as well, but you know, one sort of tip about bait traps: they're great for attracting different sarcophagid species, but do not open them in your flat or your house or what have you. Please just, when you're opening it, open them outside. I learned that to my own through my own experiences. But also sweep nettings are they're a really great family that you can just go to an environment and sweep net and collect them as well. But you know, all these methods are great to use, but where are sarcophagids? Where do they inhabit, and when can you find them? So as to when, sarcophagids are, particularly males, are most active in the warmest months of the year, and also when their hosts are active, and they're active mostly from April to September, particularly during full-on sunny weather. And they may be found in habitats such as sandy dunes on coasts. As a sort of little anecdote, myself and Nigel went to Innislas in North Wales last year, and we managed to collect about 6 or 7 species just on top of one sand dune, which wouldn't have been more than a few square meters. So you know, sandy dunes are a brilliant place to collect sarcophagids. Also, chalk grasslands, forest edges, well-lit forest edges, and hilltops. Hilltops, in particular, due to their summiting behaviour, are great places to search for sarcophagids. Also, on top of flowers such as umbellifers are also good sites or good things to look for sarcophagids. There's some animations there. Just try and get past those. Okay, so just a brief overview of pinning and preservation. You can preserve sarcophagids in 70 to 75% ethanol, but be sure with the males to hinge the genitals out before, you know, permanently storing them. I usually collect them dry, so I sweep net up sarcophagids. I'll then use ethyl acetate to euthanize them, and then pin them. So you should pin sarcophagids after a day, sort of like preferably a day maybe after, to avoid rigor mortis. And also during pinning, you should prepare the male genitalia. If you leave them too long, you may use a humidifying chamber, a relaxing fluid, or crushed cherry laurel leaves inside of a vessel. Just put the specimens in the leaves, ensuring that they don't touch the insects. The leaves don't touch the insects, to relax the specimens. But I would say this is just a brief overview of all these sort of the collection, pinning, and preservation methods. For a much detailed view, we've got a fabulous document on that Daniel's compiled and made on the recording scheme page on the Dipterists Forum website. I've provided a link to it on this slide, but please go and, if you want more information, go and check that out on our web page. So just briefly about the SRS. Before the SRS, Sarcophagidae records were submitted to various websites like IRecord and MBN by a small and committed number of recorders. However, we've in initiating the recording scheme, we've really managed to generate a lot of interest in the group, and we're starting to build a community of recorders. So like the response, especially on the Facebook page, has been really great. There we go. Okay, speaking of which, we've got various social media channels which we employ to recruit recorders and to generate interest in the group. The Facebook group in particular is great. You can just put a photo of your of an insect, of the genitalia, or just a picture of the whole organism on, and we'll get around to helping you with any help, advice, or pointers we can give you with identifying the species, if possible. It's also a great place to advertise. It's also a great place where we advertise events. So yeah, I'd really recommend checking it out. We've also got a Twitter handle, so that's a Twitter UK Sarcs page. And I said all of our resources can be found on the Sarcophagidae Recording Scheme webpage on the Dipterists Forum website. Also, Daniel did a Flesh Flies webinar with Northwest Invertebrates yesterday, and that should be available on their YouTube channel within the next few days. I mean, really, we have received a great response from people vis-a-vis getting interest in the group, and it's a really great family to get involved in. Whether you're sort of an old hand, there are 65 species in the UK, and it's not too insurmountable a group to either start with or sort of get acquainted with, so to speak. But no, so far the response has been really good. Anyway, I think I'll hand over to Daniel Whitmore now for a more detailed account of what activities we've been.
Hi, yeah, thanks, Charlie. I'm thinking I'm going to have to ask you to change the slides yourself, because I can't do that.
Okay, sure.
So next slide.
I'll do that. So, yeah.
The next slide is a bit of a repetition of the previous one. So yeah, we have our social media platforms and the website as part of the Dipterists Forum website. And I just wanted to add about the Facebook group. So some of the Recording Scheme Facebook groups are kind of more for recording proper. So like the hoverfly group, for example, lots of people post their records directly on Facebook, and the managers of the group enter the records on IRecord or into their own databases. The way we've set up the group is slightly different, also because fewer sarcophages can be identified from photos compared to hoverflies, for example. It's more of a place to discuss and initiate some questions and answers about how to identify where to collect and things like that. Can you next slide, please? Okay. So we, as Charlie mentioned, the scheme was launched last spring, and so far most of the verification of records has taken place within the IRecord environment, and we've accepted just over 2,500 records, which seamlessly go then into NBN. Next slide, please, Charlie. Okay, and NBN has 9,759 fleshfly records from 74 data sets. Next slide. And if we look at this graph of the main contributors to the data on NBN, so we're just ahead now of the Welsh invertebrate database, and we've 25% of records, and then after that there are the records from IRecord from the time before the actual recording scheme was officially launched, and the remaining 32% of records belongs to 71 different data sets. Next slide, please. So that means that within that total, about 68% of the records can be considered as having been reliably verified by people who know how to distinguish the species, and 32 need checking on a data set by data set basis, and that's something we still need to do. Next slide, Charlie, please. We also received about just under 2,000 records in Excel format from 7 different recorders, which we are still going through and checking if there's anything that stands out as possibly incorrect, and which needs verifying. And also we're entering the data into a format which can be then uploaded onto IRecord, because we want to use IRecord as our central platform for bringing all the records ultimately onto NBN. Next slide. And we also received PDFs of recording cards by Steve Falk from the early 1980s until 2015, I believe, which contain thousands of records of various families, including sarcophagids, which need to be extracted. And this is something we also still need to get around to doing. Next slide. Going back to our IRecord data, of the 2,100 odd verified records, so accepted records of the genus Sarcophaga, which is the most species rich in the UK with about 40 species, 38% are at the genus level only, which reflects the fact that lots of people upload photographs without having taken a voucher. And we verify these routinely because sometimes you can also get a species idea in rare cases, but normally it needs to stay at the genus level. And there's not really a way, as far as I know, but maybe someone who's more familiar with IRecord can clarify after the talk. There's not really a way of saying, yes, this is correct, so it's correctly identified the genus, but we don't necessarily want to carry it over to NBN, because this creates a number of records which aren't really useful from the point of view of what we want to achieve with the scheme, which is better knowledge of the distribution of species rather than genus. Next slide, please. So Charlie mentioned a few new species which have arrived recently. I just wanted to run you through a couple of these. So the first one is Macronychia striginervis. This species, a different species was previously confused under this name in the UK. It's actually a similar species, the one on the right here on in the 2 columns of images, called Macronychia dolini, which has been known in the UK for many years, but it was known under the name of striginervis. And it wasn't until the other species, the real striginervis, recently arrived in southern England that we realized that this was actually a misidentification. These 2 species had been misidentified in Europe for a long time, and so we checked the holotype of the Zetterstedt species, striginervis, and we were able to clarify this difference. The species was first recorded in Cambridgeshire, and it's since been recorded a couple of times on the south coast. It seems likely, considering also historical collection records, that this species may have arrived only recently in the UK. Next slide, please. Sarcophagidae bulgarica, which Charles mentioned earlier. This one was actually discovered thanks to the recording scheme. And this photo here was added to IRecord under the species Hemorrhoa, and good thing I clicked on a photo to make it bigger. I realized it was actually a closely related species, very similar looking species called bulgarica. This is also a species that's quite common on the continent, and you can see here that it's been recorded now from a few counties in the southeast of England, and all the records are from 2009 onwards. So here also an indication that it's probably or possibly a new arrival in the country. Next slide. Another recently discovered species, this was published by Peter Chandler. I should have added that to the slide. So this was also published this year, based on 2 male specimens, one from Scotland and one from Oxfordshire. This is a species which is extremely similar to a very common UK species, which is Metopia argyrocephala. It can only be distinguished by small details of the male genitalia and a few details of the head morphology and ketotaxy. However, there seems to be overlap in those characters. So it's really a species that needs to be identified from males which have been properly dissected. Yes.
I'm sorry, I'm rudely interrupting you. I'm afraid we're running over horribly now, and I offended myself, so I'm saying this with a certain amount of shame because I overran as well. Are you near the end?
Yeah, there's one slide left.
Okay.
So I wanted to add that for this species, it's more likely to have just been overlooked rather than a new arrival. Next slide. Next species is Sarcophagidae crassipalpis, which appeared in London in one of Martin Hall's experiments. A female flew in through the window of the NHM and deposited larvae on a dead pig, I believe. And so we got a series of males and females which were reared from the larvae. This is also a Mediterranean, like a more warm climate species, which maybe arrived during a particularly hot summer. We're not sure if it's established or not, but this one is particularly interesting because it's a species of forensic interest. So with that, I finished. Thanks. Sorry for the...
Okay, thank you very much, both of you. And we're just going to take one quick question and one comment. So Mark Welsh has asked if you plan to run any workshops, idea workshops in the future, obviously assuming that we can get around COVID restrictions eventually.
So the plan was to run a couple this autumn already, and obviously they were postponed, and we were talking about that yesterday at the end of the webinar with the Dipterists project, and the plan would be to possibly go ahead with some workshops next autumn, so 1 year with 1 year delay, but obviously that depends on the situation. It's not really ideal to do online workshops.
Sure.
Although it may be possible.
Okay, and with regards to the Stephen Folks records, Elaine Wright has posted a very interesting comment, which might be something you want to go away and think about, is that doing some sort of crowdsourcing to get that data entered into spreadsheets. she thinks lots of people will be very keen to sort of help with that project, since there are probably going to be quite a lot of them. And that might be a way to get the data online more quickly.
Yeah, something to consider. Definitely is something I should talk with. Sorry. Yeah, we need to talk about this and discuss it, because the sheets are not necessarily easy to interpret and read. It's all handwritten, scanned, and some of them are quite tough. So
yeah,
it could work, it could be doable, but it needs to be thought out properly beforehand.
Okay, I think we'll have to leave it there for time, but thank